Hello, my name is Tim Van Zeeben from the University of New Mexico. First, I would like to start with this acknowledgement. I acknowledge that we are here today on the land of people who were here before my ancestors. These people are the traditional owners of the land and are a part of a culture that still endures today. I pay my respect to their ancestors. More about that after the presentation. As I said, my name is Tim, and I'm going to be talking about predicting structure, form, and function on a classic period Pueblo landscape. The first thing I want you to do is close your eyes. Imagine you're in the desert, sand beneath your feet, juniper trees, yucca. Everything is warm. You can feel the sun coming down on you. You open your eyes and look at your feet to see stalks of corn mixed in with squash, beans. You grew this, but how did you grow this in such a parched environment? What were the decisions that you made that ultimately led you to grow here? Those are the kinds of things that my research is focused on. First, let me tell you what my objectives for doing my research were. The first thing I wanted to understand is, does the location of a particular structure influence that structure's use? In other words, if something is found in a specific position on the landscape, can that tell us what that structure was used for? Was it storage or was it shelter? Second, what were the most influential factors that contributed to the settlement patterns and placement of these field houses? These field houses are all over the Southwest, where I work. Let me give you a background of what I'm going to be presenting to you today. I will be showing you some background information. I'll talk about my study area and the methods and analysis that I used. And then I'll finally talk about a pilot study that I conducted last year in the same area. So for a little background, the Middle Rio Grande area is in about the middle of the state of New Mexico. It is the red area you see right there. It is bordered to the north by the northern Rio Grande, and to the east, the Galisteo Basin. Now, what's interesting about my particular research is that my site is located in an area that's not really Middle Rio Grande, but it's not really Galisteo. So who were these people? Now, not much research has been done on the Middle Rio Grande region in particular. I attribute this mostly to the fact that this was the area that was most heavily populated by indigenous people when the Spanish Entrada first came into New Mexico in 1540. Because of that, much of the scholarship that has been done in the Middle Rio Grande has focused on histories written by the Spanish. Now that obviously doesn't tell the hotel. This woman, Dr. Linda Cordell from the University of New Mexico, was the first one to combine all the archaeological research that had been done in the Middle Rio Grande and synthesize it into a book and a generalization of the region. Without her, who knows where we would be. Now, as I mentioned, my study site lands on the periphery of the Middle Rio Grande and other regions. You can see it here. The star represents the Pueblo of Tonque. Now, pueblos were structures that were made by the ancestral Pueblo people for housing for most of the year. They built them in room blocks, basically, where you'd have one room built next to another, built next to another. Sometimes you could be 2 to 3 to 4 stories tall. Pueblo of Tonque was probably only a single story, but it still had 1,500 to 2,000 rooms. It is thought that the pueblo was depopulated by the beginning of the 16th century, so before the Spanish even got there. So it is not mentioned in any Spanish writings from the conquistadors that came through during that time. In addition, this area is just north of Albuquerque, and the pueblo now lies on Pueblo land The rest of the study area is a private ownership, and I've gotten permission from the landowner to perform my research. Now, as I think about my research, I think about the ways that archaeology is changing currently. Before, we were interested in big monumental structures like Chaco Canyon or Mesa Verde. They're really great, but those were depopulated sometime around the 14th century, or even before that. It is thought that all the people from the Four Corners area came down into the Rio Grande area. But studying them has been difficult because other than our pueblos, there's not much to find. So we have begun to synthesize how communities work, and we're focusing on things like agricultural features to help us better understand that. One of the methods employed by this research is remote sensing technology. Satellites in space can capture what's on the ground with great detail. This is one of the photos that I acquired at a 30 centimeter resolution for my study area. I will be using this to place where study sites are and then predict where study sites might be in the entire 900 acres. Another tool I'll be using is computer software, mainly geographic information systems using ArcGIS. This is a mapping program which has a lot of functionality to it. I will be extracting geographic variables such as slope and aspect to determine how these attributes relate to each other, and if I can find patterns in any of this data. Now, I bring up my pilot study done in 2019 because while I used drone imagery, which was very high resolution, it was only used on a 1 kilometer square area of my entire study area. But I was able to pull the landscape attributes and found some interesting correlations. For example, what seems to be found in the data is that structures group, and I see two distinctive groups. Now, my idea is that one group represents structures for storage of processed agricultural material, and another group could be the place where processing and sleeping and habitation could have occurred. This is interesting because I should now be able to lay where these are happening over what kind of slope, what angles, things like that, over the entire region, and given another researcher the opportunity to pinpoint where they want to direct their research. Now, at the beginning of my presentation, I did a land acknowledgement. If you would like to find more information about the native peoples who were on the land where you are before European colonization, you can go to native-lands.ca. Thank you for listening. Again, my name is Tim, and you can contact me with any questions.